Hi everybody, Sarah Batchelor here, and I'm a music teacher in the province of Alberta, Neuro-Spicy music teacher, that's me. And tonight I'm here to talk to you about the latest education announcement dropped by Alberta today. So if you like learning about current events in education here in Alberta, if you're just interested in education and the philosophies and how it works, I try to explain things for people in common language. If you're a neurospicy human like me and you're looking for ways to support yourself or at least to feel better about your life, because hot mess here, I'm happy to be the person that makes you feel better about your life looking at me. If you like those sort of things and just how to support yourself and your students, like, subscribe, share, and push all the buttons and do all the things, because tonight we are here to talk about Bill 25. So the government has introduced Bill 25, and we're going to pause right here because introduced is different than passed. So we're going to breathe, because when I heard about the bill, I just heard the title and my blood pressure went up and I began rage crocheting. And this sweater is being made with a lot of love and rage for a small child because, oh my God. So here we go. They have introduced Bill 25, and they're framing it as a way to remove politics and ideology from the classrooms. Okay, on the surface, some of what we're going to talk about tonight actually sounds reasonable. That's because we're already doing it. But also because that's how things work. You wrap these big political moves in language that sounds calm, common sense, parent-friendly, and you just kind of hope and pray, because they pray a lot. We'll get to that. You hope that people don't look too closely at what actually is underneath, right? So let's break some of this down for us tonight. So the government says this bill is about making classrooms more neutral, more balanced, more focused on academics, and safer for students and staff. And right away, that brings me to my very first question, because I was like, neutral according to who? Because I have a problem with how this government uses the word neutral. Because whenever the government starts talking about neutrality, I think it's fair to ask whether they mean actual neutrality or the same kind of neutrality they seem to believe in when it comes to the separation of church and state. And again, we don't have separation of church and state, but we do have language that comes along to the lines of we'll maintain a neutral relationship with. See Demetrio's letter at Christmas to people in the public. Church and state, we have some issues in this province with the separation. And other things too, but not today's topic. So because Alberta has not exactly been a shining example of clean, consistent, and neutral public life, it raises questions for me. So when they say schools need to be neutral, forgive me if I don't immediately assume that that would mean the normal definition of fair, balanced, nonpartisan. Sometimes neutrality is just a very tidy word for we don't like the perspectives we've been hearing. We're not in grade 2, people. So here's what they are proposing, though. Okay? So they want classroom teaching to be neutral and balanced and free from personal or political bias. Let me say this very clearly. We are already doing this. Good teachers already do this, right? We are masters at saying, this is what one group believes. This is what another group believes. You believe what you believe. This is what we do if we're doing our jobs properly. So thank you for putting it into writing. I think it's already somewhere in our professional standards, but whatever. We already teach students to use examples with multiple perspectives. We encourage critical thinking, which is funny that the government cares about that, because people who critically think are asking these questions, right? We already do our very best to create respectful classrooms, and we are working really hard not to turn our classrooms into personal soapboxes. I've had to bite my tongue on so many issues over the years, not just recently, but we do, because that's not our place. This is not new. So when the government announces this, like they've discovered some groundbreaking educational principle, I have to laugh a little and roll my eyes a lot, because we've been doing this all along. The problem in Alberta classrooms isn't that teachers suddenly forgot how to be professional. The problem is that the classrooms are overcrowded, unsupported, underfunded, and increasingly complex. If you actually want students to receive thoughtful, balanced, high-quality education, then maybe let's start by making sure they have enough adults in the room, enough time, enough supports, enough space, and enough resources. And we'll touch back on some of these, because I'm like, yeah, your bill is actually pulling some of that away that we need. because what we already do is what they're talking about in this bill. Most of it is good practice. We just don't have the funding to do it properly. And that's the part that keeps getting skipped, or at least that the government seems to think isn't important. The bill also says that school boards should not take positions on political, social, or ideological matters unless they're directly relating to education. Okay, sounds neat and tidy, logical, right? But here's the issue. Education, the system itself, doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? Poverty, that's an issue. Poverty affects education. Disability affects education. Mental health impacts education. Racism affects education. Food insecurity, and I keep going back to this one, seriously affects education. Gender identity affects education. Immigration status, and I'm concerned about some changes coming up oh my God, I won't even go down that path, but immigration status affects education and probably soon your access to. Community safety affects education. So when a government starts deciding which issues are relevant enough for schools or their boards to talk about, that's not some magically neutral act. That's a political choice. And we should call it what it is. They're also bringing in province-wide rules around flags in schools. Only the Canadian flag and the Alberta flag, with limited exceptions, are allowed to be flown, or are going to be once this passes. Now, I know exactly why people are talking about that one. My little multicolored rainbow flag and my pink, white, blue flag that have been given to me as gifts by students, I'm pretty sure they're the problem. You know what? If a kid gives me a drawing that they make, I put it on the board. If they give me a flag, I stick it in my pencil holder. When the kid comes back in the room and sees their drawing, they go, oh, wow, my teacher loves me enough to put my art up. When a kid comes into my room and sees the flag, they go, oh, wow, my teacher loves me enough to put my flag in the pencil, to keep it. This isn't what people think it is. It's just us loving the children, how they're asking us to love them. It's, oh my God. But anyways, one thing that I'm really happy about this, because this one made me happy. We have to fly the Canada flag. We have to play the Canadian national anthem once a week, and I'll get into that more later. But separatists, I don't care if you're lying about how many numbers you have on your petition. The government is making rules that our educational system will still be very Canadian. So that makes me happy. So let me say this, with the national anthem being more formally pushed into schools, which I just mentioned, I hope that annoys the convoy crowd. And if you're part of the convoy crowd and you've shifted and you're not separatist, chills, you do you. And you do you regardless. I'm glad we live in a country where you can sign referendum, vote things, and make things happen, because that's the country we should all be living in. But I'm not going to pretend that a little bit of a part of me wasn't amused by that. Sorry, I'm a little petty sometimes. The irony was just a little delicious on that. So, but again, notice what's happening here. The government is saying schools should be less political, and then immediately moves to control symbolic displays and patriotic rituals from the top down. That is not the absence of politics. That is the opposite. That is politics with the government's logo on it. It's their brand. They're also talking about stronger behavior expectations and clearer rules around violence and aggression in schools. Okay, we've got a problem, right? Honestly, serious problem with aggression in schools. Let's go back to food insecurity, but I don't mind the fact that the language is clear. We need stronger behavioral expectations, blah, blah, blah. That I'm okay with. But here's the problem. Teachers should not be hit, kicked, punched, sworn at, or assaulted at work. I was growled at twice today. Students also deserve safe classrooms, because remember, our working conditions are their learning environment. Here's the thing that makes me crazy. More crazy. I already am, sorry. We do not have a violence in school problems because schools forgot that violence is bad. We have a violence in school problems because classrooms are overwhelmed, supports are missing, assessments take forever, families are stretched thin, and who can afford those assessments? I have to get my kid reassessed. Oh my God. EAs are scarce, mental health needs are huge, and schools are being asked to carry more and more and more with less. And our kids are hungry. So, yeah, put it in the legislation if you want, but What's the point of putting it in there if you're not committed to actually solving the problem? And we've told you what the problems are, right? A press conference is not a behavior plan, right? A slogan is not therapeutic support, and a bill is not funding. Oh, I'm mad tonight. You can tell. If you actually want safer classrooms, you have to fund the conditions that make safety possible. I've talked in other videos about how the shortage of subs is pulling me into places which putting ratios out of alignment, where I am covering 2, 3, 4 classes of kids in a room for 45. This is just my reality. The decisions this government is making, and governments before, which have put us into this position, because the NDP, you are not off the hook with me. No, you are not. The reality is we stand on the shoulders of all of the governments before. So UCP, this isn't all just you, but tonight, this is you, because this is your bill. So I can say, you, right? If you, UCP, want safer classrooms, fund them. Don't make excuses and put things in writing. And, right? Another thing they say, getting back to being cheerful, they also say they want to require supports for students with reading and math gaps. Again, great. No argument here. When the average gap in grade levels, which used to be a 2-year spread, is now 6 years. When 80% of the students in our classrooms require support and 20% are at grade level, which 6 years ago was the opposite. Yeah, no argument here, right? Except, and say it with me now, we already know this. We already know this. Teachers already know the students need intervention. We even know what they need. We even know how to do it. We know they need their targeted numeracy support. And we know that intervention, especially at the earlier levels, matters so much. What we don't have is enough staff, enough specialists, enough intervention time, enough small group support, enough substitutes so those sort of things can happen, enough funding, and enough breathing room in a day to do it well for every child who needs it. We can't even do it for half of the children. The fact that we do it for as many of the children as we do is a miracle. We are working really hard to do this for all the children. But this whole situation is becoming a pattern. There's this whole move to put more limits on trustees, more oversight on superintendents, more control in the hands of the province. And to me, that is the biggest theme here. This bill is being sold as neutrality. But what it's looking like is centralized control. Maybe that's what the C in UCP now stands for, because it certainly doesn't stand for conservative. Conservatives value education. They value fiscal responsibility. They value fairness. I know some really good humans who are conservative. My husband is a really good human who is conservative. I don't judge people for having conservative values, because conservative values make a whole lot of sense. They really do. But they're not anything that contradicts my more, and I use the word liberal not in a political sense, but in a woke sense, I suppose. They don't contradict those of us who have more, we'll use that word, woke views, right? That the idea that every child should have an education, every child should be fed, every child should be safe. Conservatives believe that too. They just don't want to go into ridiculous amounts of debt to make it happen. And I think real conservatives should be looking real hard at the UCP and deciding for themselves if that C in conservative actually means it. Because from where I'm sitting in my research, it really, really doesn't. Right? So maybe the C is for centralized control. Control over what the boards can say. Control over what school symbols we can, or not school symbols, but what symbols we can display in our schools. Control over how acceptable, and in quotations I'll put that one, how acceptable perspectives are defined. Control over governance. Control over messaging. When the government says don't be political while making deeply political decisions about identity, symbols, speech, and public institution, well, that deserves a raised eyebrow at the minimum. Probably several. I only have 2, but feel free to join me in a WTF face, because resting bitch face? I'm going to have resting WTF face after this whole government, right? Here's my bottom line. There are a few pieces in here that sound fine on paper. Safer schools? Yeah, please. Love it. Support for reading and math gaps, obviously, right? Clear expectations around professional conduct. We already have those, but fine, cool. You do you. This is fine. I don't mind having that in writing. But this announcement pretends Alberta's main educational problem is actually ideological drift. It isn't. The fact that many, many teachers are disenfranchised with the current government is not the problem with education today. Our problems are underfunding, complexity, staff shortages, lack of support, lack of space. The list goes on. A government that keeps acting like a new rule is the same thing as a real investment. That promises made are the same as promises kept. That 161 schools in that silly robo-text, which they said 160, sorry, they rounded down, which is weird for them, is actually only 67 that'll be open by 2027, right? These things are not. You can't regulate your way out of chronic undersupport. You cannot slogan your way into literacy intervention. You cannot legislate away complexity. You cannot claim neutrality while actively deciding whose voices, whose symbols, and whose concerns are accepted in public schools. That's not neutral. That's power. And I look at life through the lens of behaviorist communication, and my second question is, where's the power dynamic? Because everything is about power and control, and not in a bad way. Not in a bad way, because we need autonomy. We need to feel seen. We need to feel voice. We need power. Without it, that's very unhealthy as well, right? So that's not what I mean. When I look about power and control, I look at it from a sense of how it's causing conflict and where the possible resolution for the situation could be. So with behavior, right? When I'm dealing with a student's behavior, and once I understand okay, behavior's communication, what are you trying to tell me? Okay, there's usually a power control dynamic in some way that needs to be resolved. And it can be something very simple as, you can sit in this chair or this chair, dude. Which chair do you want to sit in? I don't care which chair you sit in. Suddenly you have autonomy. Oh, I can pick my chair. And they sit, and then we get on with our day, right? That's the kind of power and control I'm talking about. But this government is escalating it to power and control, right? It's a little bit different, right? So Alberta teachers, support staff, and the leaders are already doing what most of this bill claims. First, I want to point that out again. We are trying to create respectful classrooms. We are already teaching critical thinking. We are already trying to support struggling students, and we're drowning with them. And we really, really, really are trying to keep schools safe, right? We just need the government to do the part that only the government can do. Fund it. Staff it. You're our boss. Hire some people. I don't know where you're going to find them. Please support it. Fund it. Staff it. Support it. Trust professionals enough to stop pretending that the problem is ideology when the problem is capacity. Because once again, this feels a whole lot like rearranging the wording while ignoring the house on fire. And us educators, we're standing in this fire. And yeah, my mind is a little just blowing. I was like, removing ideology. My first thought was, oh God, what are they doing to the curriculum now? And then I delved in and I went, oh, this is kind of worse and better and worse. And I don't even know. So I rage crochet. Probably saves the world some days, honestly. One of my kids today said something upset them and they went, oh, this is the moment my villain arc begins. No, we're not quite there yet. The horrors persist yet. So do I. And with that, I just leave you to try and digest, because I have no more words, which in and of itself is something. So I leave you with this tonight, and keep on fighting the good fight, teachers. We're doing the best we can with very little, and we're doing amazing. Really, we are, considering. And parents, thank you for supporting us. And the general public, thank you for having educators' backs. We need you to continue, because the trickle-down effect of these decisions is not minor, right? I didn't delve into it, but we're going to do a video on they're requesting immigration checks, essentially, on students in our province in a different way, in a much more intrusive way, in a way that will deny students education. I'd love to talk about the Trans Day of Visibility and CBE, the Calgary Board of Education's response, because I had a great conversation with my child who's trans about that one. So there's lots to be talking about, right? We could be talking about the AISH funding issues. There's just so many fires, and I'm spread thin, right? That's why I started rage crocheting before I wrote my script, because I was like, no, I want to address this. I do, and I want to be a voice in this conversation tonight. But where do I stand mental health wise, internally, where am I, where's my head at? Because you can tell my tone, I'm angrier than I usually am in my videos tonight. And a lot of what's in here isn't worse than what I'm usually angry at. It's the fact that it's just more, and they're putting it in writing in such a way that I just, my love of dystopian novels and movies, they're not supposed to be nonfiction. I'm not supposed to be going, am I in 84 today, or am I in Animal Farm? Or maybe I'm in The Handmaid's Tale. Maybe I need to find my red cloak. That's where I'm at in my head. I'm just a little, make it make sense. So we hope you continue to have our backs, because we have your kids. And that means we have yours too. So thank you so much. And hopefully you enjoyed a much less rage-filled review.